The fantasy football season continues to fly by, and whether your team is dominating or maybe you're struggling, it doesn't matter. You still need to continue to be aggressive on the waiver wire. I know it's been a brutal year. It really has. A lot of disappointment. Injuries have been absolutely insane, but there's so much talent still out there that we don't even know exists yet, right? There's going to be a ton of breakouts the second half of the year. That's why you have to continue to be looking, to be adding, to be making your team better. That's why in this video, we are talking about 10 plus players that you need to add on your roster before week 9 of fantasy football. Let's start with my number 1 pickup of the week, and it's pretty obvious and it's pretty depressing. If I'm being honest with you, it's Tyrone Tracy Jr. We know he's the next man up in the Giants backfield. Cam Skattebo, done for the year. This one hurts. This one stinks because you guys know me on this channel. We love the Scat Man. We love Cam, and the injury was just so brutal. The way that he went out was gut-wrenching. It was horrible to watch. Like, he was on his way, Cam, to being a league winner. He was the RB10 in fantasy, and he was probably a guy that you drafted in round 10 plus. And he goes out like that. It was awful to see. Such a fun player, so great for fantasy. The game is not going to be as enjoyable the rest of the year without him on the field. But we do have to talk about the next man up, and it is Tracy, who's going to see a workhorse role on this Giants offense. And week 8, Tracy finished with 10 carries for 39 yards, 2 receptions for 14 yards, 7.3 fantasy points. And if we look back at last year, Tracy from weeks 8 to 17 was the RB9 in fantasy, averaging 13.3 fantasy points per game, which included a week 8 explosion. If you guys remember, against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 20 carries for 145 yards, a touchdown, and 23 fantasy points. So we know what Tracy is capable of. He's not the player Skattebo is, but he's not a bad player either. He's a guy who's very versatile. He can get it done on the ground and through the air. And this Giants offense is going to lean on him similar to how they did with Cam. Like, they don't have anyone on this offense really for Jackson Dart to move the football with. So yeah, Tracy is going to see a ton of work on this offense. If you really need a running back, then I would be aggressive getting him on your team. All right, moving on to our next guy, Tyjae Spears, who, Tennessee, what are you doing? What are you doing, Titans? Like, make Spears the workhorse RB1 immediately on your team. Like, Tony Pollard has done nothing. Tony Pollard is a very average running back that brings nothing to the table anymore. He has not been great. And what did the Titans, like, the Titans are 1-7. Like, play the younger dude. Pollard probably won't even be on the team next year. Like, why are we not giving the more explosive, the more talented running back more work? Like, what do you guys have to lose? In a perfect world, one of these guys gets traded, like trade Pollard away, or Spears gets traded to Kansas City. Like, can you imagine that? Put Spears in this Chiefs offense and let's see what happens. Obviously, that likely won't happen, but regardless, Spears is obviously the more explosive player. He's the better player who is lethal in open space. He's hard to bring down, and he's also a nice weapon for Cam Ward in the passing game. And Spears flashed his potential and big playmaking ability in week 8. 9 carries, 59 yards, a touchdown that included that impressive 41-yard run where he almost scored, and then he chipped in 3 receptions for 23 yards, 17.2 fantasy points. Spears did have the edge over Pollard in snaps, 34-32. This game was a blowout, so maybe that's why Spears was getting more work. Let's hope not, but that needs to be mentioned because that is semi-concerning that Spears was kind of the guy towards the end of the game where it didn't really matter as much. And we also know this backfield could be a very annoying 50-50 split for the rest of the way. But Tennessee, if they come to their senses and they make Spears the RB1, he could be a difference maker for your fantasy team down the stretch. He's someone that I would want on my roster because you're just betting on the talent of Spears. And if Tennessee trades away Pollard, which I don't know what team would want Pollard, but if Pollard gets traded away, like, Spears could absolutely be a league winner. So these are the guys you want on your bench. I think you can probably start Spears in your flex. All right, moving on to our next guy, Troy Franklin, who's really starting to emerge as a legit weapon for this Denver Broncos offense. We did have him listed as a sneaky start last week. Just saying, you know, not to toot my own horn. He had a really nice game. It was obviously his best performance of the year so far. 6 receptions, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns, along with 26.9 fantasy points, 87% route participation, 27.5% target share, 18 targets and 3 touchdowns over the last 2 games. To be fair, he did go up against the Giants the week prior and then the Cowboys. 2 pretty easy matchups for receivers, but still, I don't think what he's been doing as of late is fluky or it doesn't matter. Like, it absolutely does. I think this is a sign of things to come for Franklin, who is a young receiver only in his 2nd season that's finally starting to show his true potential and connection with former college teammate Bo Nix. Franklin, we know the talent. He just hasn't really been able to put it all together. But as of late, he's looked really good, and he's kind of quietly outperforming Cortland Sutton. So that will be interesting to see what that looks like moving forward. And if you need a receiver, he's absolutely worth an add or a stash. His schedule does get a little bit harder coming up here, but I think he does hold flex appeal for the rest of the year. All right, moving on to our next guy, Bam Knight, who has been the lead back for the Cardinals over the last 2 weeks. We know they're coming off a bye week, but Knight has been very serviceable. It hasn't resulted in a ton of fantasy points, but he still looks like the best running back on the roster until Trey Benson returns, and put up a solid performance against a tough Green Bay defense in week 7, 14 carries, 57 yards, 3 receptions for 7 yards, 9.4 fantasy points. Plus, we just saw that the Cardinals released Michael Carter. So Bam is going to be the guy in week 9 on Monday Night Football against a really poor Cowboys run defense that just allowed 3 touchdowns to RJ Harvey and are currently allowing the 7th most fantasy points to running backs this season. So if you need a plug and play guy to start, maybe this week only, then go after Bam Knight because of the matchup, because I think he is a good player and the volume that he's going to see. We don't know how long it's going to take for Trey Benson to round into form. He's eligible to come off the IR in week 10, but who knows? Maybe it's week 11. Maybe it's week 12. Maybe they ease him in and Bam Knight is still the guy. So Knight is worth an add for this week and for potentially beyond. If you need a running back, if you need someone to replace Cam Scatterbo, I think he's a nice player. I really wish that Kyler Murray would not be the starter because he just tends to be really bad for this overall nature of this offense. Jacoby Brissett, believe it or not, is better for this offense, but the Cardinals obviously have to start Murray unless some crazy trade happens. So regardless, I still do like Knight overall as a nice plug and play, especially in week 9. And I think he is a strong add overall. Get him on your team. And I think he can be serviceable potentially for the rest of the year. Maybe there's a 50-50 split with Trey Benson. We don't really know. But again, obviously, week 9 is what you're paying up for if you really need a spot start. Great matchup on Monday Night Football against the Cowboys. All right, moving on to our next guy, Chimray DK, the receiver for the Titans, might just be breaking out right in front of our eyes as he's transformed into Cam Ward's favorite target in the passing game without Calvin Ridley, and had another nice day in week 8, 7 receptions, 93 yards, 16.4 fantasy points, 90% route participation, 21% target share. The rookie has now scored 16 fantasy points in each of his last 2 games, and DK should continue to eat out of the slot, whether Calvin Ridley is on the field or not. I think they're going to have DK in the slot. They're going to play him outside as well. He's looking like the best receiver on this roster, and we know the Titans are going to be in negative game scripts all year long. So they're going to be throwing the football at a very high rate. I still have faith in Cam Ward. He hasn't looked great overall, but I think he's doing his best with what he has, and it's a really bad offense with not a lot of weapons. But DK and Ward have really started to form a strong rapport as of late, which is really promising for both players. I like the talent of DK as well, and you pair that with his usage and his volume. Yes, he's on the Titans, but that's actually a good thing to have a receiver on the Titans because of what we just talked about. They're going to be throwing the football a ton for the rest of the year, and if Ward continues to develop as a passer, I think this is a guy who could come on the second half of the year quietly and be very impactful for your fantasy football team, because I just don't think there's anyone else in this wide receiver room. Alec Ayomanor has been a nice player, but I think DK is far and away going to be the guy on this offense for the rest of the year. So you want that on your team. You want a talented player who could be unlocked by Cam Ward, who's going to see a ton of usage on a team that's always going to be trailing and throwing a lot. So I do like DK as a strong speculative add. I think you can start him in your flex going forward. All right, moving on to our next guy, Bayshul Tootin. I'm not giving up on Tootin. He is such a good player. He just needs more opportunity. He needs to be rostered in all formats as well, especially considering it costs you nothing to do right now. Get him on your team, especially with Jacksonville coming off a bye. And we know the post-bye rookie bump is a real thing. Bayshul has also been injured for most of the season. He's been dealing with the shoulder injury. He hasn't seen a lot of run, but that's going to change the second half of the year. And don't forget the whole Liam Cohen, Bucky Irving in Tampa Bay, right? It might not be the same thing, but Irving didn't really come on till the second half of the year either. That could be Tootin. Similar players, similar talent levels, talking about Irving and Tootin. People don't believe it because they haven't seen it. But Travis Etienne started out the year cooking, but as of late, he's been very, very average behind a really good offensive line in Jacksonville. And we've seen Etienne's snap share slightly drop every single week over the last 4 games. Remember, Tootin was handpicked by head coach Liam Cohen. It's his guy. He wants his pick to work out. And outside of that, this is a really, really extremely talented player. We haven't seen flashes yet from Tootin, but this is a guy, his final year at Virginia Tech, rushed for over 1,000 yards, 6.3 yards per carry, 17 total touchdowns on only 183 attempts. That is absolutely wild, while ranking 8th in elusive rating, 10th in yards after contact per attempt, 10th in breakaway percentage. This is a big running back, over 200 pounds, that runs a 4.3 40. This is like a Ken Walker type of player. He's 209 pounds. He's big. He's shifty. He's elusive. He is really good. And this is another situation where just bet on talent. Like, it costs you nothing just to stash him at the bottom of your bench and wait and see, right? Maybe he turns into nothing, but if he turns into something and Cohen starts to feature him, he could absolutely be a league winner the second half of the year, whether you like it or not. So trust me on this one. The talent is there. All he needs is the opportunity, and he could absolutely explode. All right, moving on to our next guy, Christian Watson, who made his return on Sunday Night Football. First game back since tearing his ACL last year, and he had an immediate impact. 4 receptions, 85 yards on 4 targets, 12.5 fantasy points, 65% route participation, 3.86 yards per route run, along with a 17.4% first read share. Watson absolutely makes his Packers offense work, similar to what we see with Jameson Williams in Detroit. He opens up to the middle of the field so Amon-Ra St. Brown can eat. Last night or Sunday night, he opened up the middle of the field so Tucker Kraft could eat. It seemed like every time Kraft caught the ball, there was no one around him. So potentially you're going to get your boom bust games with Watson, similar to J-Mo, but that doesn't mean this isn't a guy that you want on your fantasy football team, because we know that when they boom, right? So Watson can absolutely have a huge role on this offense. He can absolutely have monster games for your fantasy football team. He's a talented player on a good offense attached to an ascending superstar in Jordan Love. Big splash games are coming for Watson, and if I were you, I would want him on your roster just because you don't know what's going to happen. Yes, you can say it's a crowded wide receiver room in Green Bay. It absolutely is, but what we just talked about, Watson's role on this offense is so valuable that he's going to be on the field a ton, which means Jordan Love is going to look for him more times than not, which means he's going to be a producer for fantasy football. All right, let's talk about some other strong ads, some guys I still like that you need to add, you need to consider adding. First guy up, Brandon Ayuk, who's going to be returning soon from injury. He's an interesting player. The San Francisco offense, we don't really know what's going to happen with all the injuries in the wide receiver room, but he's Brandon Ayuk. So yeah, add him if you have room. Isaiah Davis, who had a nice game for the Jets behind Breece Hall. If Hall ever were to get traded, Davis would be a monster in fantasy football. Kyle Monangai, rookie running back for the Bears. I think he still has a serviceable role on this offense. Ali Gordon for the Dolphins, rookie running back. He's worth an ad. Devin Neal as well. Kayshon Boutte, all he does is score touchdowns. Alec Pierce, a nice ad for the Colts. Tank Bigsby, if something were to ever happen to Saquon Barkley, if his injury is serious, Bigsby would have a role, but they have a bye this week. So he's not like a must-add player because Saquon probably is going to be okay coming out of the bye. And then Colston Loveland, rookie tight end for the Bears, didn't have a huge game, but he's seeing a bigger role on this offense with Cole Kmet banged up. So he's worth an ad if you have room at the bottom of your bench as well. That's all I have for you guys today. I really appreciate each and every one of you. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.